My name is Fraser.
My name is Mark.
And we are the hosts of the geekiest show alive. To the outside world, we're ordinary geeks.
But in the Fab International Studios, we talk comics and find other geeks just like us. This is Geek of the Week. Every week it's live.
Every week it's live. It's not lip synced for no one's purpose other than my own.
He does actually lip sync his own voice on.
Just in case my voice doesn't ever pop up.
Wow.
Always prepared for it. Yeah, so this is a section of the show called Pull or Pass. So we take a look at typically free comic books. Sometimes we do more, but it's always usually free comic books and say whether we would pull or pass on them. If you're concerned that you don't know what this word pull means and what pulling a comic book is, what the act of pulling a comic book is, don't worry, I've got you back. So when you go into your local comic book store and you pick up an issue of, what should we pick up an issue of?
Calamity Kate.
Yeah, well, yeah, I was going to say something that we're not picking up this week because
Monstrous.
Let's say you see an issue of, I'm just going to go on my own thing. So you saw the Sabrina trailer, and you went, I'm going to pick up Chilling Adventures of Sabrina. I'm going to check out a random issue with that. You put it behind, and you pick up a Monstrous, and you pick up a Calamity Cake, because why not? You can pick up more than one book. And they say, hey, do you want to add these books to your pull? And you say, yeah, sure, why not? But really, I don't know what I've just signed up for. It's fine. Whenever one of those books comes out, say you put down a 1 or a 23, whenever a 22, a 24 or a 2 or whatever comes out, they'll leave it behind the desk for you. And it's sort of acts like a mini subscription, but it's less intense, we need a direct debit. You need to come here every week and pay this, and we're going to charge you even if you don't, or whatever, or this hectic, crazy stuff, sort of like a Blockbuster thing, or, streaming stuff now. It's not like that at all. It's whenever you come in, you can come in once a month with payday, or you can come in every week on Wednesday, New Comic Book Day. Come up and say, hey, what's on my pull? And they go, this came out this week. And it's nice and reassuring that because comics... comic book stores only have so many comics, and sometimes people buy your comic and you're like, I wanted to read this, and you can't.
Yeah, we've been burnt by that quite a few times, haven't we?
Yeah, and it's also important to know, if you know something's coming out in the future, like you've seen a previews, or, Marvel and DC and all the big comic book publishers, they put out solicitations early. The June and July ones, I think, have just been put up. You can actually look forward and see what's coming out, and you can add that to your pull. So when it comes in, not only will the retailer definitely order that, because sometimes they don't order every book. There's a lot of comics out that not everyone reads.
It makes me sad.
So it's important there sometimes to do that. But when you're like me and you read a lot of Spider-Man, it's almost a guarantee that a comic book store somewhere will have a Spider-Man book.
Shall we start with Spider-Man?
Yeah, well, I was going to start with the one you mentioned you wanted to pick up, but yes, of course, I will never say no to starting with Spider-Man, because don't know if we've established this on the show, but I do love Spider-Man.
You do.
So I'll let you start.
Well, Spider-Man Life Story. What a brilliant idea that is.
Right.
What a lovely little nod to the history of Spider-Man. And reboots happen at the blink of an eye, but this is clever. Basically, the concept is that Spider-Man was launched in the late 50s.
No, 1962.
All right, but Spider-Man was launched in the early 60s, whatever. And it's got years and years and years and years and years of comic books, but he's only gone from 16 to about 30 in the comic books. Whereas this is acknowledging that when it started, and they're actually doing a timeline.
Yeah.
That's...
So the first one, it said Spider-Man Life Story, the 60s, which is epic. So
they're going to do a book for each decade.
Yeah.
And so by the time we get to now, he's going to be in his 60s.
You rapscallions! And
this is brilliant. This is such a cool concept. And for me, what I realised is Spider-Man's about the same age as... Well, Spider-Man's about the same age as my dad.
Yeah.
And that's really cool. So,
your dad could be Spider-Man.
Well, obviously I've known my dad for 40 years. I'm interested in the way Spider-Man's going to develop like I've known my dad.
Yeah.
It's so fantastic. And all this history. I grew up in the 80s. I was a teenager in the 90s. I can't wait to see a retrospective, intelligent look at the 80s and the 90s and putting Spider-Man in that.
Yeah.
The 60s obviously doesn't resonate so well for me because I wasn't alive.
Are you sure about that? I thought you were...
You're so rude. You're so rude. You're so rude. But isn't it just an exceptional concept?
It's beautiful. And it could be one of them as well. I've not looked too much into it because I knew I was going to pull it and I sort of didn't... I wanted some surprises. But they could even just do, like, you know, each decade they do it, what a 70s Spider-Man looks like, or what an 80s Spider-Man. So it could be like they do reboot it each decade.
I'd be interested to see whether they change his costume to match the fashions of the time as well.
Well, the thing is, they pretty much matched the art from the 60s and like the Spider-Man looks that he had then, because obviously there's a very significant Spidey look from the 60s. It's that, you know, that hair, you can see his forehead, and obviously that Osborn has their... they look like cornrows, and they always look weird whenever you read it, like, but they had obviously their signature hairstyle. And the book did feel like it was, you know, homaging that 80s arc and art. But yes, so there was that acknowledgement there, which I thought was really cool. It would be cool, to see. And there was the fashions as well, because, like, Peter Parker comes with this, like, this sweater on with like a turtleneck thing, and I was like, oh my goodness, he looks so awful. And then I realised, oh, it's the 60s.
He's supposed to.
He probably looks cool, or thinks he looks cool.
And the references to the monkeys and stuff
exactly.
like that. Because we've talked about like modern comic books referencing stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
And now they're doing that, but setting it in the 60s.
Retrospective.
And, it's clever. This book's great. I'm sorry to spoil the build up to whether or not we're going to pull up us, but this book is exceptional. It's a very special title.
I was really looking forward to this because it's two exceptional comic book creators who have worked on Spider-Man in the past. Like Mark Bagley's work on the Ultimate Spider-Man, the art is incredible, and that sort of, you know, that Ultimate Spider-Man is really it's exceptional, and it's brought so much great stuff to Spider-Man in all forms of media. You know, so many of the cartoon animations, so many of the films, so many of the games have been inspired by Ultimate Spider-Man. And, you know, his art style, you know, he had a nice little there's an Easter egg in Homecoming with like Bagley being spray painted on the wall, which is nice because, you know, the arts and stuff. So when I knew I was like, okay, so this book's going to look beautiful. He's going to be able to perfectly, you know, epitomise Spider-Man visually. And then when I saw that Chip Zdarsky was writing it, I was like, okay, yeah, so we're going to get a perfect Peter Parker and Spider-Man here, because that dude, when he was writing Spectacular Spider-Man, it was the perfect book for Spider-Man that you needed right then, because it was, you know, it was coming out opposed to the Amazing Spider-Man run, which was more serious, like world-ending stuff, and his was more like friendly neighborhood sort of stuff. So, and I was a bit gutted that I was like, oh, Chip Zdarsky's no longer writing Spider-Man. But then when I found out he was writing this with Mark Bagley, I was like, what a team! And like we said at the beginning of the show, it was a great week for Spidey titles because Friendly Neighborhood was out this week as well.
Yeah,
and obviously the video game one, City at War or something. And it's just like, there's so much going on. My poll's just all Spidey and then other stuff as well that we've done for this show. And it's just a great time, and it's all great creators all working on Spidey.
This section of the show is making my poll unmanageable. There's too much good stuff. Stop making good stuff. Allow me to be Grumpy Geek, as he calls me.
Exactly.
But there's no way that I could not find anything. I couldn't find anything wrong with this, and I'm even more excited about the decades that I know and love.
Exactly.
Reading about that.
And like you mentioned before when you were talking about it, it is, you know, the origin story of Spider-Man has been well known for years, I would say decades and stuff, just because it's one of those things, and you talk about your dad, Spider-Man's a generational character. Each generation has their own Spider-Man, and generational comic book readers will have their artists and their writers that they know for Spider-Man, or they'll know their certain stories or their characters. And they managed to mix all the characters well in this, like your Gwen Stacy's, you know, your Flash Thompson's, you know, his whole thing. And we've skipped over the important thing about this book as well, like the story of it. It's dealing with the Vietnam War, which I thought was a really cool take to have, especially with the superheroes, because obviously Spider-Man looks up to, you know, your Iron Man, your Captain Americas, and they're helping out on this war, and he's he's caught in between whether he should go to should sign up to war and try and sit he's like, I could really make a difference with my Spider-Man characters, and it is that thing of, but New York does need me here as well, so it is that conflict. And one of the big things at the end is Flash Thompson's going to war, and he's like, Peter and Flash always have this bickering sort of thing because of that whole high school dynamic. Flash was always his bully who's had a love and fandom for Spidey, and it was ironic because he didn't know that Peter was Spidey and all that, and that's being addressed in Far From Home, which is epic. I'm loving that we're seeing that part of it. And Flash just goes, the reason he went to reason he's going to war is because it's what Spider-Man would do, and Peter hears that and goes, oh man,
is it what Spider-Man would do?
Yeah, and
it's a great.
Throwing up those questions, and I think it's brilliant that it does.
And that's the thing. Beyond the concept, it's actually a very well written comic book, and it doesn't shy away from how people felt about the Vietnam War and the how muddied the waters were, whether or not people agreed with the war. I mean, it's Captain America speculates on whether or not the war in Vietnam was right. There's no way when they were writing in the 60s, Captain America would have speculated about whether or not the Vietnam War was right or not. This is very progressive stuff.
Yeah, his whole character is, it's propaganda for war. It was always a celebration of war. And
I think that's important.
That in this film as well.
This is a more realistic depiction of the 60s than comic books from the 60s.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's fascinating.
Yeah, it's that retrospective.
Yeah.
Just different opinions. And it's, which is why, again, like you say, I would love it if they explore more decades. Spider-Man can age with the decades, or, you can go, okay, now we're doing what Spider-Man origin would be if he was in this decade or this, which is cool to see. Obviously, we had it with Ultimate Spider-Man. We had Spider-Man growing up in a more technology age. It'd be really funny to see a millennial Spidey. That would be quite interesting. Well, he
won't be a millennial, he'll be in his 60s.
He was a millennial. No, but I mean, if they do, okay, so now we're doing Spider-Man life stories in the noughties, but he's, if he was 15 in the noughties.
Am I misread the concept here? Or is he going to age normally?
No, that's just my speculation.
Right.
Because there's two pathways they could go with this. They could do he ages normally, or they could do, okay, this is Spider-Man life story if he was in the 80s.
Oh, I hope it's the former.
There's two.
I hope it's the one I assumed it was. I'll be disappointed if it isn't. I'd like to see him age naturally through the decades.
Now, it could even be a thing of they just stay in the 60s. They don't even do that. But I'm 50-50 on it. I'm obviously going to read it anyway. But seeing an old Spider-Man would kind of, I don't know.
No, I think that's ace.
Be weird. Yeah, but who would the other heroes be? I guess that's when you bring in the new generation. But then after a while, it becomes so dystopian. But anyway, whichever way it is, I'm definitely pulling it.
Yeah, it's good.
If there was any surprise there.
It's really, really good.
Of course, Fraser's pulling it. It's a Spider-Man book. Now, another book we talked about when we did this cool little introduction for the show was Calamity Kate by Dark Horse. Now, what were your opinions on this book, man?
I pushed to put this on Pull or Pass, and I was really looking forward to it. And the art is really cool. The monsters are really, really cool. But it's a poor man's Buffy, isn't it?
Oh, Mark, Jesus.
Yeah, I was disappointed with this book. I think to some extent it's because I found the main character fundamentally unlikable as well. She's manipulative and selfish. She imposes herself on others. She interrupts people when they talk, and she's a bad influence on people's kids. Well, I just wanted
to say... Oh, sorry.
You mean you... Very clever. But she's a bad influence on people's kids. Maybe I'm showing my age, but someone who's a bad influence on people's kids is bad. And I just found the main character really unpleasant. So I think it kind of jaded me to the rest of the title. It's my biggest disappointment of 2019, I'm afraid. What did you think?
I was going to say I enjoyed it. I liked the one thing I did like was the two types of Kate we got. We got the Kate who's sort of dealing with her friends and stuff like that, and the kid. And
the unlikable person.
And then we got, the Calamity side, so sort of so we saw the person behind, her actual, because she's known in this sort of dystopian world as, she's Calamity Kate, big star, whatever. But we got to see the other side of her as well. And I liked them going back and forth of it. It could be one of those things where maybe it's a purposeful thing that you're supposed to not really like or stuff like that, but... I don't know. I enjoyed it. It was a good read. In the back of my head, I was always thinking, what was I thinking in the back of my head? Probably some monkeys clashing some stuff together. No, in the back of my head, I was like, oh, is this going to be like a sort of, this is her before the disaster and then this is her after, which we've seen quite a lot of it, and then it'd be like, oh, so the big thing's going to be what's going to incite this, and it was all happening at the same time, and I was like, oh, okay, so that's a kind of cool take on it. It's like, okay, they're still sort of living a semi-normal life, but there is this whole monsters and beings outside of it, and I didn't really get the Buffy vibe, like discount Buffy vibes, but then that might be just because I wasn't obviously so engrossed with Buffy as yourself. But I did enjoy the fiery redhead. The creators of this are is it the artist who's a fiery redhead or the right? I think it's the artist is a fiery redhead herself. So it was cool to sort of see that.
Maybe I'm being a bit harsh, but I was just so disappointed with it because it was one I'd been really looking forward to.
Yeah,
and it just didn't hit the spot for me.
It is hard when you look forward to books so much, or when you look forward to anything, like anyone can relate to this, like they look forward to something for so long and then it's not quite what you expected. It can be disappointing, it can sort of jar your opinion on it, but for me I think it's that whole thing of not having expectations for it and just sort of taking it as it is, sort of helped me. And yeah, I really enjoyed the art style. We've been saying
the art was cool, because the monsters were cool, because
we've been doing a lot of Dark Horse recently, and we always, whenever we talk about image, we're always like, well, it's image, it's all about the image, the art style is what set them apart. But Dark Horse have been really hitting it hard with their
they've been smashing it, it's true.
Thingies, yeah. And I personally enjoyed the story they were telling. I might have to pull it just to
really? I'm afraid it's a pass for me.
Just to balance it, Thanos with his
look at that. Look at that. You pulling an Indian, me not.
I know.
It's a crazy world we live in, Fraser.
It's a mad world.
That was lovely.
Thank you. The last book we're going to talk about is Teen Titans issue 28. And I know some of you are thinking, well, probably not if you listen every week, because I always do this spiel. And you're thinking, oh, God, Fraser, not again. Issue 28? But Fraser, I can't start halfway through something. Don't worry, guys, it's fine, because it's part one of a crossover story with Deathstroke. We talked about Deathstroke earlier in the news. He's going to be in the new Titans season. So it's exciting stuff. It's very relevant. And it's the first part of the Terminatus, I think it was called, or Terminator. Deathstroke, he's a Terminator. It's
true.
Thingy crossover.
He's scary.
But yeah, it's part one of a story, and it's one of them where I mean, you can speak for this because you're not really a Teen Titans reader established. You can say if it was a bit jarring just jumping in issue 28, because for me, I haven't been reading Teen Titans. I'm more of a Titans fan. Less so now because they got rid of the team I really enjoyed. Still enjoy Titans, but not as much as I did when it was the previous team. I don't really like Damian Wayne, which is why I sort of stay away from Teen Titans. But I thought this would be a cool book to sort of go with the Titans vibe. But yeah, I'm just going to start blabbling and pass it out over to you and what your thoughts were.
It was all right. I didn't feel alienated. I didn't feel like there was a massive universe that I was missing out on and didn't understand. It did feel like a good point to jump on if you were going to jump on.
Yeah.
And I did feel a little bit like they kind of like big upped Deadpool as the ultimate Deathstroke as the ultimate bad guy, serious badass, and then they jobbed him to a bunch of children. That kind of jarred with me a little, because the build-up was great.
Yeah.
And then they just battered him.
But for me, I feel like that's part of Deathstroke's plan, because he seems like he's scheming something. He's like, oh yeah, you think you've got me, but this is what I wanted. And the last time I read Teen Titans, funny enough, was it was the Lazarus Contract? That might have been the film that came up. It was a contract anyway, and it was a crossover with Titans, Teen Titans, and Deathstroke.
Right.
And that was really cool. And they referenced it in this, they always reference how the Justice League have dealt with him, Batman have dealt with him, the older Titans have dealt with him, and they've not been able to keep him down, so we're going to do it. And I think it's sort of that arrogance of youth, especially with Damian Wayne, where they think, oh, we've got him, and that's where, because this is part one, I reckon that's where the Teen Titans downfall is going to come from. I liked that they
you're
introduced
probably right.
they introduced all the Titans as well. They were like Damian Wayne, son of Batman, and then all these.
I love Lobo's daughter. I didn't even know she was a thing.
Oh,
I like
she's
Lobo.
Brilliant. She's that proper like it's almost like the Raven character that they have, but more. It's like the Raven character. And
Does Lobo know about her?
yeah,
Oh, okay, good.
well,
Lobo, he's brilliant. I love. And now we can definitely read some Lobo.
yeah, for sure. I'd definitely put it on there. But yeah, so I liked those introductions.
Yes, that was good. That was welcoming.
I was going to say it's a Teen Titans team. Some I'm not familiar with, and there's some, like I say, with Damian Wayne. I really don't like Damian Wayne. He did some horrible stuff to Ginger Wally West, and he's just done some horrible stuff. And in the Injustice universe, again, done terrible stuff. Killing characters I really like. What a little
Oh dear.
Richard, and I don't mean Grayson.
Yeah. Well,
But yeah, and we got to see Wally West as well. So I enjoyed that Wally West as well, because it was it's not to confuse you, but there's currently not currently two Wally West, because the other Wally West, it's not looking great for him. But yeah, in the Rebirth universe, they've had to deal with having two Wally Wests, and I think they've managed to do it well by including this Wally West in the Teen Titans team. And again, it's the Teen Titans and Titans just have so many. They always manage to mix different teams together, and just it's always team books that do this. They'll introduce new characters, or
that's
some will come out.
not new.
And it's it can be jarring, but the way they did it in this book was inviting for me. And I'm glad it was inviting for you as well. It's sort of like being like, okay, this is a team, and it's nice to establish that, especially when you've got part one of a book. So yeah, I'm glad it wasn't jarring for you. It definitely wasn't jarring.
It didn't do anything wrong, and it was fine, but it wasn't enough. It was a better comic book than I expected it to be, maybe. But it's not a pull. But it's that was all right. There's too many good titles out there, and I'm already committed to so many other things that it's not a pull. But I didn't dislike it.
It's where you've got to be a bit picky.
Yeah,
it's
exactly
a picky
right.
pass.
Yeah,
a
a picky pass.
Yeah.
What a nice way of putting it.
Or it's I'm just going to read it when Fraser gets it.
I was going to say I'm genuinely interested in whether you're going to pull it or not.
I'm going to pull definitely this story, and
Cool.
then maybe read on. It's just Damian Wayne, man.
Oh,
What a little
so and so.
so, yeah.
Yes.
Rapscallion, as a 60-year-old Peter Parker would say. That little rapscallion.
I'm looking forward to 60-year-old Peter Parker.
I don't know if I am. There's an they did a sort of Dark Knight Returns for Spider-Man. Oh, what was it called?
Dark Spider Returns.
No, I do have it. But I might put it on trade off.
Yeah, do it. I'd like that.
Old man Spider-Man, and he kills Mary Jane with his radioactive specimen.
Oh,
After a long period of time.
Anyway,
That's a big thing from the book, but
anyway,
I just hope they don't go into that with this live story. But yeah, they're the comics we checked out this week on Pull or Pass, and that's our opinions on them. We pulled some, we passed some. But what were your thoughts on these books?
We've got polls online on Twitter and Facebook.
As well. On Twitter and Facebook, we've got polls, so make sure to drop your thoughts on there. But if there was something else as well, there's a whole heap of comics that came out. What was on your poll this week? What did you look at and pass on, or what did you pick up? Did you pick up anything new to sort of anything that intrigued you? And did you pull it? Did you pass it? Did you go, what other Spider-Man titles did you pick up all the Spider-Man ones?
Let us know.
And yeah, we want to know. Facebook, Twitter, YouTube comment section below. Anywhere you want to go. Right. And now, that's Polar Pass done.
Thanks for listening to Geek of the Week. Be sure to tune in next week. Same geek time, same geek channel.
And if you want to follow us on social media, it's at GOTW Radio on Twitter. Search for Geek of the Week Radio Show on Facebook. And to listen again, it's www.mixcloud.com/Geek of the Week Radio Show.